Right, good afternoon, everyone. This is episode 34. Who thought we would get to 34? I do not know. I didn't believe it myself. The Contextual Podcast. I'm running solo, so I thought I'd do a slightly shorter podcast than normal because I'm on my own. Wanted to talk about a couple of things, bit of footy stuff. I'm smiling because of certain results that have happened over the last few days. Sorry. And then also a couple of plugs for my new podcast, which I'm doing with a good friend of mine called Comics in Motion, reviewing old comic book-based media, so TVs, films, games, anything from that sort of perspective. So if you can give us a follow, that'd be great on Twitter, or give us a retweet. I appreciate that. I'll get some more plugs in for that later. The first episode is actually up on iTunes, and obviously my account has been retweeting it, so it's easy to find. It's Comics in Motion on Twitter, iTunes, SoundCloud, everything. Anyway, this episode, I wanted to talk about something else other than my not so favourite football game anymore, is Gears of War. It's a massive series in my sort of gaming world. It might not be to everyone's taste, but since 2006 or 2005, when I saw the first couple of E3 videos, it's dragged me in, and I've become such a big fan of the whole third-person shooter genre, and that's obviously why I'm always raving now. A slightly different game, but PUBG-style game. But Gears, for me, set the bar for this generation. I know people disagree, but I remember back in 2005, I wasn't a massive advocate of watching a lot of the E3s and stuff like that, but I'd sort of kept my eye in like through IGN and things like that, but I wasn't actually aware of when the actual shows were. So I sort of really got into it around 2005. So I remember seeing a tech demo of Gears 1, and I was blown away. And it wasn't as good as what came out in 2006. It was 2006, it slightly changed. The models and that were a lot better. But I remember leading up to the release of Gears in 2006, and I was dying for that game to come out. November time, it couldn't come quick enough. I remember we were going to a wedding of a friend of ours, and I got the game in the morning, limited edition, and that was it. I was there all day. I didn't even want to go to the wedding, unfortunately. Well, we did go. They're still married, so I suppose the small mercies there, this couple. But yeah, I didn't want to go, and Gears just sucked me in. The campaign, the multiplayer, everything just about that game seemed to work. And I know, obviously, Uncharted's held in high esteem, obviously, because it's a Sony game and things like that, by Naughty Dog, graphics-wise, campaign-wise. The second one was obviously the best campaign-wise, but I've always had a problem with the shooting on that game, especially from a multiplayer point of view. I thought that it'd be the sort of game that had dragged me towards a PS3 online, because it was quite similar to Gears with this sort of crouch and cover shooting, but it just never seemed to hit the spot like Gears does. I never thought the controls were correct. So Gears from there was just the game. We used to get 6, 7, 8 of us in a room on a Friday night. We were all together. We'd all be playing. You could have then you'd have 4v4 against other teams, and one of you gets killed. It was sort of like everyone went back to sort of pre-game lobby, watching the other one sort of duke it out. There's plenty of arguments, kickoffs. We've had some funny times. Like when I was in the band, it was a big band Friday night. If we didn't have a gig, Dave, who's doing my other podcast with me now, he would be involved in this. He never had a 360, but he'd go around to the drummer's house and we were playing Gears. And this went on for a long time. It even surpassed, obviously, COD 4 came out around about the same time as Gears. And, that was a great game sort of thing. That might have been 2007, but Gears was just the game that taken off, and everything about it, from the characters, the stupid over-the-top steadhead approach, Marcus Phoenix and the team. It just dragged me in, and even to this day, we're talking 12 years this year since it first came out. I still can't get enough of that game. And then, obviously, you were going on to sort of the tech of it, the Unreal Engine 3, Epic Games. Obviously, Cliffy B was like the sort of focal point of Gears. I remember when they announced Gears 2, he was out on stage with his chainsaw, and it was synonymous with everything about Microsoft, really, and Xbox. So it really, really took off, and it was just like the game for me over anything. And I remember around, I think it was November 2008, the second one came out. And I was all right with it. Yeah, it was a good game. It sort of elevated certain things. It introduced the Horde mode, which obviously everyone loves, where there's just waves and waves of enemies up to like, I don't know if it's level 25 then or level 50, but that was like, it was a better technical game, but it never felt as good. The maps were never as good, I didn't think, and it never sort of taken on its own identity. Even though it was a sequel, it just seemed to be a bit of a copy and paste thing, and it still stands up well, and the shoot mechanics were good. It just never had that sort of grab, and the campaign didn't really hit home like the first one had. The first one, tech-wise, the first I'll never forget, I had a HD Sony Bravia, and it came, I won it in a competition in Manchester, on a radio show, and this Bravia was HD, but we didn't have an HD telly, so it had to go in my main living room. So when I did get the chance to sort of set it up and put it in HD with I used to use the composite cables, obviously 720p, and it was absolutely amazing. The level up for me, and it always will stand up against any game from that generation, whether The Last of Us, Uncharted, obviously. I mean, Last of Us is held as obviously probably the best technical and then beautifully looking game from that generation. And for me, Gears was the one that brought in the HD era, and it always will be. And then the rain effects on Mansion and things like that when you were playing online was just sensational at the time. Obviously, you see it now, and the level to sort of Gears 4, it isn't a comparison, but at the time it was such a step up and something that sticks with me for any sort of gaming stuff over the last maybe 15, 20 years. So yeah, so Gears is like one of my all-time games. And then obviously around about September 2011, Gears 3 came out. Now that, even though Gears 1 I always hold in high esteem, Gears 3 was the one where I got to sort of maximum you can get on the multiplayer, and now it's obviously backwards compatible on the Xbox One, and when you play it, I struggle now because it's 30 frames per second. I know that sounds daft because PUBG is 30 frames per second, but Gears 3 now, compared to say the Gears remaster they did, and then Gears 4, which is obviously 60 frames per second, is such a step up. But Gears 3 was just, for me, even over Gears 4 multiplayer-wise, was the best multiplayer they did. It seemed to bring Gears 1 and 2 together with its own little slant, and everything just seemed to work with it. And I went to like level 150 or whatever it was to get like infinite or level 100. So yeah, so great game. Always will. I'd love them to do a remaster on that. I know people are sick of remasters, but I'd love them to do a remaster on it. And then you've obviously got Gears of War Judgment came out around about March, April 2013. That was a bobbins game. Absolutely fucking rubbish. It came out by People Can Fly, who brought Bulletstorm out the year before, because Bulletstorm had a beta for Gears. And the beta was great, but Bulletstorm, I raved about it. Steve-O still gives me stick for that, which is just, it was embarrassing because it was a tight game, but it just wasn't the same. But when Judgment came out, anybody who played Unreal Tournament, Judgment had the same dying sort of sequence as the other Unreal games. It just didn't feel like Gears. You never had the sort of bleed out stuff, and the controls were on the D-pad. So you had like your Y button sort of moved your weapon cycle, and the way you got killed was just sort of like you just flopped on the floor. It didn't flow. It had traversing around the maps to sort of bring it up to a different level than what Gears was used to. But I just absolutely hated that game. I loved the sort of campaign stuff, or the co-op things where you played as a single class, like an engineer or a medic or whatever. That was really good. But as a game mode, I can't know what it's bloody called now, but I really enjoyed that. But actually, as a multiplayer entity standing up against the others, it was just like a skin of Unreal Tournament, but not a good version, because Unreal Tournament was good online in its day. So yeah, so that's just sort of like a blemish against the Gears universe for me. And then obviously last year we were, I loved the games. I got the Xbox 360, the Xbox One limited edition Gears of War with the pad. The season pass, obviously it doesn't mean anything to a lot of people who are not into Gears. I understand that, but for me it was, the epitome of everything right. And then when I got the game, I absolutely loved the game. The campaign was good, the effects, the graphics, brilliant. Now it's in 4K, even better on the Xbox One X. But the thing that's always stuck with me is the season pass, because I've said it before on here, but season pass was basically a load of crap. It was absolute bobbins. It was like you're paying all this extra money, you don't get anything different. Any of my friends can come on. There's no sort of maps or anything locked behind the season pass. Everyone can play it, and all you get is a load of bobbins, bounty hunter sort of FIFA packs styles thing, and then the odd player skin. They should have released all the maps from Gears. I still say they should release all the maps from the old Gears every single version that's been out, every single map. There's the capacities to do it. Every single character. And then I went on the other day. It's a great game. And obviously, I'm always raving, and people are probably sick of me about PUBG, but I can't get off that. So for my multiplayer fix, I'm on that. But we did go back on Gears, and it's still a great game. Holds up really well against anybody online. It's just got, but the thing is, it's a niche sort of fan base now. So the people you go up against are really good. So it takes you a good 5 to 6 sort of games to get back into it because you are a bit rusty. It's one of them games you've got to keep fine tuning. You can't just leave it and play it. So yeah, so only a brief little thing on Gears. I know it probably knows a little 10-minute segment on thingy, but if anyone's not seen Gears 4, I get it. It's on the Xbox Game Pass at the moment, included in that. That's $7.99 a month. Don't worry, I'm not being paid by Xbox. And then it's just a great game. Obviously, the season pass you'd have to pay for. You can probably get it for 10, 15 quid brand new anyway on disc if you really wanted it. Another bit of news, actually. Burnout Paradise has been announced as a remaster. One of my favourite racing games. I even hold it up there with like the Horizon games for that arcade. Absolutely love that game. I even had the Guns N' Roses Paradise City as my phone ringtone for a good few years. It came on the 360. Had it on the 360. Got it on the PS3. And I can play it on both, and even online. I love that game so much, so I can't wait for that to come out in March. I'm not sure about the price, but it might make me jump in because I just absolutely buzz off the whole thing. Even DJ Atomica, who gets a bad press, but there's not been a game like it since, I don't think, in some respects. Horizon, brilliant. It's its own game on its own, a totally different sort of slant on the arcade racing. There's some of the challenges on there that you can do, which are great. But as a single entity game, nothing beats Paradise. From going from one side of the map to the other and just pissing about, jumping through billboards and off buildings and things like that. And the races were all good, fast and frenetic. And then obviously Burnout 3 is the one everyone goes on about. And it's a great game. I've got it in there, Burnout 3, on the original Xbox. I was playing there. I love the crash mode, which was some of that in Paradise, the abandoned. It was all just sort of, you part of the game, really, what you did. But the crash mode was one of the best things that made Burnout at the time, because of the sort of physics engines were unseen in games to have that sort of level of destruction and that. So I still say they should have maybe remastered Burnout 3 and a couple of the others and put them all together as like a bit like what they've done with Crash Bandicoot. Obviously, I know different games, different memory, different era. They were, you know, it was a PS3, Xbox 360 game. Paradise, and 3 was an original Xbox PS2 game, but just a great series. And obviously they've got someone else developing it. Criterion have done it, but yeah, if you can keep your eye out on that, definitely worth double dipping as far as I'm concerned. I'll definitely be getting it. Brilliant game. Now, really, that's all I want to talk about on gaming, because let's talk about the big news from this week. And I don't do this, and I've not mentioned them very often as a rival team. And apologies to my good mate Bibby out there, who's a City fan. But that game that I saw on Monday, City v Wigan, or Wigan v City, I saw a couple of things on Twitter saying, you know, was it a sending off, blah, blah, blah. I don't think, even with my red tinted glasses, it was a sending off. I just think it was a strong tackle, Sunday league job, but I ain't complaining. This face does not look fucking bothered one bit. Sorry about that, mate. But yeah, I just think that was a bad decision from the ref. Obviously, there's a couple of tackles on the City players, but you know, it is what it is. It evens itself out. I'm not sure, and this isn't just attacking because it's City and that, it's not. But I just don't understand the agenda of Aguero's obviously threw a punch at someone. We know for a fact that he's obviously been goaded. Them fans, you know, the pie eaters should not have been on the pitch. Them and their 6 fingers should not have been on the pitch. We know that. But as pro footballers, knowing that you've just got beat, surely you've got to get off the pitch. So I think it's a bit of both, really. And then seeing him sort of throw a punch and then go at him, whatever you think of, you know, Cantona and stuff like that, that was obviously a lot worse what Cantona did. I'm not saying it's a 9-month ban, but there should be something. And then obviously Guardiola going at the ref at half time. I mean, if that was Mourinho, and I'm not just saying this from United, then it'd be hung, drawn and quartered. The BBC would be having a documentary on how it all went wrong at United. I mean, Talk Sport, listen to every day. That clown Jim White, who I always used to like, every time I turn it on, he's talking about United every single day. And it's pathetic. So it's like, seeing that result, and I thought Wigan did really well. And when Will Grigg went through, I thought something had happened because I didn't have the sound on. I had it on my phone, and he'd steamed it through because I don't know what City were doing. They seemed to be caught flat-footed, and then he went and buried it. And even when he scored, I thought the ref took it back because it just seemed to happen so slow. And then obviously from there they went and went and went. And then at the end of the game, you've got the City fans kicking off, the Wigan fans going over Gordon, and these hoardings going. And Wigan need doing as much as City do for what they've done. But I'd love to see what the reaction is. I mean, City are playing the games. I saw today like they're taking legal action against Wigan and the FA and all this crap, sort of trying to hide from the fact. But you don't throw punches at fans, whether that fan's a tosser or not, unless you've really, really bad. Unless they were laying into him or something, then fair enough. But the lad was goading him, so it is what it is, isn't it? You just don't do it. They're supposed to be professionals. So you just get off the pitch as quickly. And that goes for United players and stuff like that. I never condone what Eric did. And now you can look back and sort of laugh at it. But at the time, I remember listening to it on the radio, and then it was on ITV News at like just after 9 o'clock when he got sent off to start the second half. And it was like, what the hell am I watching? You thought his career was over. I'm not saying his career is going to be over, Aguero, by any stretch. But there should be something. I mean, Joey Barton got done for doing it to the City players in that game when they won the league. And he went mad, didn't he, at Tevez and stuff. So it's only fair. It's only fair. And that's all I'm going to say for my red-tinted glasses. Tonight, the mighty Reds are on against Sevilla away. I think it's going to be a tougher game. And obviously, the way we're playing, we're so sort of bipolar at the moment. 1 minute, we look like world beaters. And to be honest, in some of the games, we've looked good away in Europe. I just don't know where he goes with the team. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, Lukaku's looked good. He's got to play Pogba. All this idiots like Jim White before talking nonsense, he's rubbish, he shouldn't be playing. And it's just like, you're absolute idiot. He's got more assists than, I think there's only De Bruyne who he's close to, and he's played less games. He's pretty close to his assist rate. I mean, De Bruyne is a great player, there's no doubt in that. And that's it really. He's had a few good poor games, don't get me wrong, he was poor against Newcastle. They should have been chasing back that. I don't think he should have been on the pitch when he got that injury. But it is what it is. It's done now. We can't change that. But to sort of get the agenda that he's finished or whatever, it's just to sell papers, and it's getting boring now. So I don't know what they do. For me, my team tonight, if he's fit and he's only played a few minutes, I'd play Baye for 60 minutes. I'd actually play a bit controversial, but I'd probably play Rojo, which is fine. But if he's not fit, then Lindelof. He seems to have a bit more time on the ball in Europe, which is the only way he's going to get the confidence up to play. He doesn't seem to be able to cope with the physicality of the Premiership. But in Europe, he's looked quite tidy. Valencia right back, if he's fit. Luke Shaw, none of this Ashley Young bullshit at left back. Get a left footer down the wing, overlapping. If you all play Ashley Young, then do play him in front. I don't agree with having a right footer on the left and a left foot on the right. I don't agree with that rubbish. But we haven't got any left footers, so that's out the window. Play him. Then you're looking at Pogba, Matic, and probably Carrick. Carrick's looked quite solid. It's a 3. I won't play Jesse King Dabber. He's been a bit poor recently again. We'd have Sanchez with Mata behind Lukaku, and that's what I'd go with. Strong physical team with 2 players buzzing around and Lukaku feeding off them, and that's exactly how I'd play it tonight. No pissing about. Just go for the jugular. And then see where we go. I mean, Sevilla are a good team, and like anything when they're at home, especially in Europe, they'll raise the game. So we'll see what happens there. So I think tonight United are going to win 2-0. Don't bet on it, but 2-0. Okay. When we get beat 4-0, don't come and speak to me. Okay. I will not want to speak to anyone. But no, I think 2-0 tonight. What else was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, we were talking about it's sort of football based, and it's to do with like my next topic. We'll talk about like streaming and stuff. Going back sort of onto the gaming side of it. A good mate of mine who mentioned before, he's a City fan. We met through Twitter. He follows this show, the podcast. He's got his own show now called Bibi. It's Bibinho is his show. I can't remember the full bloody name. It's on Twitch. I watched the first one the other day. It was really good. He even kept his cool when I dropped in a question. He said, "What game would you like to see?" And I was winding him up saying Manchester United on the SNES, Manchester United Championship or whatever it was on the SNES. And he kept his cool actually. I thought he was being serious. I think he was dying to tell me to fuck off, but he didn't. Anyway, so I want to wish him really, really good luck. And if you can, get following him on Twitter. It's Bibi_Pez and Pez Universe as well. who he sort of collaborates with on PES, and he's very, very honest on his assessment of Pro Evo and all that stuff. So please support that guy. He's a very, very good mate on Twitter, and he's going to be coming on this podcast hopefully next week. We're trying to sort something out, but I'll be going on his in a couple of weeks as well. So that'll be quite an interesting sort of concept as well. And these people are obviously a lot more play the game a lot more than I do these days. So it'll be quite interesting to see the perspective on how they feel, whether I'm proven right or wrong or whatever. It'd be really, really interesting podcast. So yeah, please, I'm looking at next Thursday with Billy, so I'll announce it anyway, because obviously we'll have another podcast this week. The audio with Steve-O's going up, not Steve-O, with Andrew from last week is going to go up later on today. Not been a delay really, I've just tried to spread it out, because the one with Steve-O only went up yesterday, and obviously we're discussing film and TV and stuff. One thing I wanted to talk about was the WWE Network. I know I've gone to another subject, but I've had it for the last 6 weeks. I've watched a couple of things on there. I know I got it for like $1.99. As someone who I sort of flick between it from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, I'll pay for it and then I stop, and I don't really watch anything, because I like the old stuff, the actual live shows. I've said now, and the pay-per-views. I only actually watch Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, and that's mainly for some of the old ones returning, not because I think it's a great product. But yeah, so I got it for $1.99, special offer for 3 months. Been watching some of the old stuff, and I've got to say, and Steve-O said this on the podcast last week, like he's been watching some of the old, Monday Night Wars stuff. The quality of the product then to now, even though we know it's all a stage pantomime, stage fight, or whatever, but the believability in the play of like the characters, the Vince McMahons and that, and it's not even with rose tinted glasses. You watch them now, and even the matches stand up so much better. They also, we say the wrestlers, it's all about ring psychology. Anybody can jump off a top rope or whatever once you've got the right training, but to actually sort of make people believe that you're actually having a proper fight and a proper sort of wrestling match is quite clever, and sort of it's a different level really. And like I've been watching, like one of my favourites was Survivor Series 1990, which is The Undertaker's debut with Brother Love, and there was a team of it's Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim Neidhart, the Hart Foundation, Coco Beware, is it Tito Santana and someone else against The Undertaker. He come out last, The Undertaker. I think it was Power and Glory, was it? I'm not sure. But The Undertaker came out, and they all knew who they were, but I remember him when I watched it. He tombstoned, I think it was the Hitman, and Driller Monsoon, suppose he don't know who he is, was like, that's a tombstone, because obviously it's all rigged, but he sort of didn't, even now watching it, sort of didn't sit very well. But you watch the quality of stuff like that, and then at the end it was the Ultimate Warrior. It was one of the teams was Ultimate Warrior, Texas Tornado, and Legion of Doom. And I think Texas Tornado got eliminated, and then at the end it was Ultimate Warrior, Hulk, and Legion of Doom, which is like your dream. Anyone who's into wrestling back then, that's like your dream team, the best tag team who were as strong and as powerful as the Warrior and Hogan, obviously in that arena. And then they were going up against I think it was like the Warlord and stuff. It's really good. It was really because the Undertaker got eliminated out of the Survivor Series, so he wasn't actually in the main event. And you watch that, and then you watch the events. Now even the Royal Rumble I watched a few weeks ago. They had a little thing with Ronda Rousey, which was quite good, but it wasn't groundbreaking. But just the pops and the whole atmosphere. And obviously, I think it's because, like they say, back then people sort of believed that it was sort of real. So I did. I mean, obviously I was a lot younger. A lot of kids do. Like I've got my nephew, my godson today, and he's a massive wrestling fan. But when we're talking, he's like really serious about it. He's only like 9-10 years old, but he's like, he's horrible to the crowd. He's this, he's that. And obviously, I'm not going to, burst that bubble for him and break the illusion. But the whole product might be commercially better now, but as an actual spectacle, it's a lot worse, and it leaves a lot to be desired. I just wish at some point they would just put a full stop under this PG bullshit and all this sponsorship stuff they're doing, and just sort of try a proper, 15 plus like it used to be, Rory's War, or, some sort of product to make it a bit more interesting, a bit more believable in what's going on, because now it's so sort of condensed and diluted. It's just not what it was, I don't know, as I approach 40, it's like, well, you shouldn't be watching wrestling, but it's been something I've watched since I was 10 years old, and I give no sort of apologies for that. It's just something I enjoy. I mean, UFC's taking it over for years now. It must be a good 10 to 15 years. The UFC's been part of my life that I've been into properly, even back from the 90s when I was into it. And it was Ultimate Fighting Championships. You know, I watched all that. But the last few years, it's just surpassed everything in my sort of thing. So yeah, so just if you get a chance, WWE Network's a great source for that nostalgic sort of wrestling fix, if you like. I mean, YouTube has a lot of stuff, but it doesn't have a lot of like fresher, older matches that you've probably never seen. There's a lot of stuff I've never seen. The pay-per-views I've seen, but the actual sort of house shows or a recorded live match between, say, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden I watched the other day. It'd never been released because they were supposedly never fought against each other in Ric Flair's first run. But it's there. It's a good match as well. Hulk's obviously just going in as like the baby face, and Ric Flair's the heel, and Hulk's got all that heat on him. He's doing all the crowd stuff, but this was, I think it was about 92. I think it was just before he jumped and sort of left WWF because of the steroid scandal. So he's still big. And then obviously he went to WCW about 18 months later. But yeah, if you get a chance, get on there. Anyway, it's not another shameless plug. It's just what I've been watching at the moment. One thing I saw about was the UFC. They're currently filming The Ultimate Fighter, which is, if anyone who's not watches The Ultimate Fighter, it's a sort of extension of the UFC. A lot of the champions have come from this. It's basically a reality show where they get men and women, or they'll have a house full of men, a house full of women, and they'll have two coaches who are usually current fighters in the same weight class. So you might get two flyweights who are managing like a load of heavyweight contenders, and they get them in a house. They all live together. It's always kicking off. Obviously, they're not allowed to fight properly, but sometimes it does. They're always drunk. So you make it into a proper reality show, and it's filmed over about 6 weeks, but they could potentially have in between 3 and 4 fights. And then it just every week there's a different thing. These coaches hate each other. It goes up again. Obviously, there's a bit of sort of acting going down in respect of having it up for the cameras, because if they all got on, it'd be a pretty boring show. But it sort of died off. The quality of the show's been great the last few years, but the actual viewing figures, it's died because it's on something like, tough 26 now. There's about 26 series since about 2004 or 2005, whatever it was. The first winner was Forrest Griffin when he fought Stephen Bonner, which put the UFC on the map properly. That's like the fight that got everybody back into sort of cage, or back into or into cage fighting, because it went mainstream, that show, because of the sort of reality side of it. Because everyone was a reality whore then, like I still am now. But yeah, it's a really good show. So it's like Daniel Cormier, I think he said it a couple of weeks ago, light heavyweight champ, fighting Stipe at heavyweight. Daniel Cormier's fought heavyweight loads of times, and he's unbeaten as a heavyweight. But as a light heavyweight, he's lost twice to John Jones. Obviously, John Jones has been done the second time for drugs again. So he's sort of been overturned. So he's back as the champ, but it'll be easier for him to sort of make weight. But Daniel Cormier is an Olympic-level wrestler, so it's a really good fight. But they're filming it at the moment, so that should be really, really good show when it comes out. I think they're fighting in July, so realistically, you're probably looking around about end of April, May time, and maybe even the middle of April for sort of the premiere of it. It's usually on BT Sport, middle of the night. That's the only problem. BT Sport, like they don't have the sort of TV guide stuff correct, so you'll go to tape it, and bloody baseball will be on or something. So keep an eye out. If you're really into that sort of thing, it's great. And if you've got sort of a Plex or a Fire Stick, and there's certain apps you can get, I believe, allegedly, supposedly. Got that little wink again. If it's the audio people, it means nothing, but there's that little wink. But all the Ultimate Fighter stuff's on there. So even if you go back to like people like Michael Bisping and that won it, and obviously he's the best British martial artist for the last 10, 15 years. And then you've got like all other people, Rashad Evans. These all people come through it who've ended up being champions in that. So Matt Serra, obviously I listen to the UFC Unfiltered podcast. He's on there, Matt Serra, and he beat GSP. He was on a bit of a skid. They put him in there. He won his couple of fights, or 2 or 3 fights on the house. 2 fights in the house, then he wins the final, goes on to fight GSP for the title, knocks him out, becomes the champion again. Becomes the champion, and then obviously GSP beat him on the rematch. But he was like, Matt Serra sort of lived off that ever since. He was a great fight. I know, good jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's one of the best in the world. He's the first American to ever have a black belt under the Gracies. So it's a really good show, really, really good show. And a lot of stuff. If you're a fight fan, it's perfect. I mean, Conor was on there as the champ about 3 or 4 years ago against Uriah Faber. And he didn't fight Uriah Faber, but Cody Garbrandt, who's under Uriah, he was the champ who got beat a few months ago. And and he kicked, I think it was a flyweight chap, he just kicks off with Conor, and Conor's there just taking the piss all the way through it. He's great. He's really good. Conor's really funny. I think it was just before he fought Aldo to win the title in 14. So I think it was 14, I think it was all filmed. It was great, great show. So yeah, get on that. Now, I told you it wasn't a long one, and it's certainly not. All I say is, I've got this new podcast. I want people to follow it, retweet. Hopefully you like the content. It's not just my podcast, it's mine and my good friends Dave Horrocks, who was on episode 31. He obviously does his own with Ben, his mate, the Grassroots Coach Cast. So please give them a follow and a listen. That's for any sort of budding coaches out there for underage football, girls, boys, whatever. They're going through all their badges at the moment. They've got a great section on there, Retro Rewind. So me and Dave have come together, and as big comic book hero fans, I'm more from sort of like the film side of the Supermans and things like that. And Dave is from the comic book side. He's read a lot of the comics and that. So we've got like a different perspective. So we've done the first one. It's in the bag. It's on iTunes. It's Comics in Motion. We've got a red icon, so you can't miss it. I'm on Twitter, Comics in Motion. Me and Dave answering stuff ourselves. It'll either be me or Dave. Please give us a follow, a retweet, whichever you can, and just have a listen. It's a long one, the first episode. It's 2 hours 27, but it's a good listen. I think we've researched it well, and it was all about Superman, the 1978 Christopher Reeve one. So this week we're going to do Superman 2, and we weren't going to do sort of a full series in one go on each podcast, but these two films are the same basically, because Superman 1 and 2 are filmed together, and due to production problems and things like that, they abandoned one for the other. So we're going in detail on Superman 2. I've watched it last night. I've watched the Richard Donner cut, which is the director who got sacked. I've got my thoughts going down, so we're going to record it on Sunday, and then we're looking at probably Monday, Tuesday for it to go live on iTunes, Stitcher, podcast.com, all other sort of podcast hosting sites. It'll go around the world, hopefully. We're getting a good bit of traction. We've had some nice feedback, some nice people following us. We're only in our infancy, and obviously it's the first episode, so as it goes, it's going to change. But it'll sort of run alongside this, because obviously Andrew comes on and does his film stuff with me and TV, and obviously Andrew's knowledge of the quirky sort of arcade indie games on the PS4 is great, and it's an eye-opener for me, because some of the suggestions he's doing, some I probably won't play, but some I will, and it's like making me sort of go on and think, you know what, I'm going to give that a try, and that's what I've done. I'm currently in the process of doing my Crash Bandicoot review. I've only played it for a couple of hours. I must admit, it's a lot harder than what I thought it was. He's really sort of knocked me for six, really, how difficult it is. So I've got to do some streaming on that, and I'll do a bit of commentary through the PS4, but that'll go straight to YouTube. It won't be on my normal YouTube, normal Mixer channel. For anyone who out there, I'm going to be doing a retro streaming as well. Now that I've got all my arcades and emulators up and running, and my old consoles and stuff, I did a bit of a test run. If anyone wants to have a look on my YouTube channel, there's a bit of fuzz to the sound, because when you do these things, you have to host it through your PC. So what I've done is I've left the sound up on the PC, so it picks up a bit of the fan noise at the start. But I'm playing Mario Kart. I've added a load of games to my SNES Mini now, because obviously you can hack it. There's a load of stuff that I want to play. I'm going to have a wrestling night with a stream. I'm going to have an old football night. I mean, some of the games are terrible. So I'm going to try and play an hour at least once a week on a different night. So one night will be a wrestling night. One will be an old school footy, maybe a fighting game. I've got Final Fight on there, Street Fighter, World Heroes, things like that. All games that I used to play in the arcade and stuff when I was younger. I've got old arcade emulates, the main stuff. So we'll do that, and as well as the normal stuff. So if you want to sort of get involved in that, please give us a shout on Twitter at the Contextual World or at Contextual Podcast. Mainly at the Contextual World, because that's the main one with the most followers on and gets the most traction. The podcast stuff's just a backup Twitter thing to go with, like the podcast feed when it goes live. It automates on Twitter, so they're all sort of linked together. Anyone who wants to give me a review on the Contextual Podcast, please, I would love some 5-star reviews on iTunes, SoundCloud. It just gets us more noticed and gets the audience up, to a different level, and gets a bit more exposure. I'm getting some nice feedback off people still. Obviously, I'm trying to sort of diversify the content, because I need a couple more guests on, which I've got lined up. It's just getting the schedules together. I've got Alan coming on, hopefully, from WEMB, Pez Casual, as he's known now. We're going to chew over that article I mentioned a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, Alan's been quite busy with work, so our sort of schedules haven't met. I want to get Brian back on without a doubt. If Alan comes on, I want Brian to come on, and we'll just have a podcast and maybe get Andrew on as well. But the Andrew stuff I love when Pixel Hunter comes on. You know, the content's great with the TVs and stuff. And I've been watching a couple of the films and TV stuff he suggested, you know, because I'm sort of like the superhero action stuff, you know, my sort of knowledge needs to broaden in that respect. So yeah, it's been really good. So I told you it was a long one, but this has been episode 34 of the Contextual Podcast. Please give me a follow on Twitter. It's the Contextual World. On Mixer, which is my streaming channel, which is on the mixer.com, which if you can get and view my streams through your Xbox, if you've got an Xbox One. My tag is Contextual Podcast, it's just Contextual Podcast. On YouTube, Contextual Podcast. My new podcast is Comics in Motion with my good friend Dave Horrocks. Give us a follow, retweet, and everything else. I've been Chris Phelps. This has been 34. And we are saying au revoir.